Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I see lunchtime has taken a bit of a toll, and it was my problem when I saw my slot in this presentation that I knew I was going to be in the middle of the program. It was going to be after lunch, and the thing was, how could I keep you awake? So I decided that I would show you some very scary pictures. Maybe that will wake you up. These people not only look scary, they have done very scary things. They have brought humanity to the edge of nuclear war. Fidel Castro and his Cuba, if you are old enough to remember it, brought us the Cuban Missile Crisis. We're that far from war with the Soviet Union, thermonuclear war. The Ayatollah's successors had a very aggressive program of development of nuclear weapons, and only recently there has been some progress. Some of us think that it was not progress. Sanctions by the United States are specifically targeted to manage this outrageous conduct and perhaps protect the interests of the United States and the world. But sanctions of this kind are not an American invention. They're a Greek invention. In 433 BC, Pericles and the Assembly of the People of Athens passed a law which is known as the Megarian Decree. And it was a decree aimed at the city-state of Megara, because the city-state of Megara had conducted itself in an outrageous manner and had killed a herald that had gone over to Megara to rebuke them for desecrating the temple of Dimitra. The Megara Decree, excluding the Megarians from the use of Athenian harbors and of the market of Athens. But Athens was not inclined either to revoke the decree or to entertain their other proposals. Thus says Thucydides in his first book of the Peloponnesian War. But the problem is when you have sanctions, is how do you enforce them? Because there's money in breaking sanctions. There are those who are interested in doing it because there is something to gain. And in the olden days, what you used to do is to send out the Navy. And in the Napoleonic Wars, Nelson was in charge of the British Navy, and he conducted an embargo of France. This is a hero of the Greek Revolution who in his younger days used to be a sanction breaker. He was a captain and a ship owner. He found it lucrative to engage in this business. Legend has it that he was captured off Cadiz. He was brought on the flagship, and Nelson asked him what he would do in his position. And undaunted, Admiral Miaouli said, "I'd hang you from the middle mast." He thought he was brave and let him go. Now, the United States, to my knowledge, in my lifetime, has not hanged anyone for breaking sanctions. But they do have a means of enforcement, and that is an organization at a bureau inside the Treasury Department. It's the Office of Foreign Assets Control. And what these people do is they keep tabs on those who break sanctions. This is their mission statement, which is pretty broad, because they enforce sanctions not only for political matters, but also for narcotics. It's a detailed statement. It doesn't say anything, but they have a lot of power. I don't know how many of you have ever come across US enforced sanctions. Anyone? The most common sort of sanctions you're going to find yourselves involved is when some transfer of money you're making will get blocked in the bank and you cannot get an explanation why this happened. And the reason why it happened is the banks have software that read the transfer orders, and they pick words. And if they find names, certain names, they'll stop. And the way you deal with this is you ask your banker here, they don't know. You probe a little deeper, and you will find out that an intermediary bank in New York has had the money snagged for some reason or other because the software told them there's somebody involved who shouldn't be in this transaction. So the way you cope with this is you talk to the intermediary bank. We talk to the intermediary bank in a couple of days, that we give them what information they want, and it is resolved. The other kind of issue that you may run into with OFAC is if you want to do a major transaction, a sale or purchase, long-term charter party, and you're dubious about who's on the other side. That we resolve by talking to OFAC and getting the facts straight with them, and we'll go back to our clients with our advice. Now, why should you care about any of this? Because these rules and regulations bind U.S. persons, and most of you or your companies are not U.S. persons. The reason is very simple, and that is you don't want your money blocked, either in a small transfer or a big transfer. OFAC is watching. And for this reason, it is a good idea to keep your eyes open. Now, how do you do that? OFAC has a list. It is called the Specially Designated Nationals list, or SDN. Your chartering department, or your sale and purchase people, or your operations people should be alert to this. There's something you can do. You can find out if the person you're doing the business with is in the list. And there is a handy tool that you will find online. You just go to Google and type in OFAC sanctions search tool. Put the names in, and it will give you not only the person, not only the contents of the SDN list, it will give you the contents of other lists also. If you find the words there, if you find the name, be very careful. That's cause for alarm. One cannot talk about sanctions without mentioning recent events involving Iran, a certain agreement that was reached in the middle of July. Now, the impression that some people have is that, and this is from the Iranians, that sanction games is over. We have a saying about baseball, it ain't over until it is over. And there is in the papers a comprehensive plan of action that the 5+1 countries that negotiated an agreement for the lifting of Iranian sanctions have reached. But this involves certain events, and these events are an implementation date, which is in the future, and that implementation date has to do with compliance with inspections of the International Atomic Energy Agency. Once we reach that implementation date, some sanctions will be lifted gradually. But that date is far off. The estimates are it's not going to be any earlier until the middle of 2016, and we'll see what happens. Will Iranian sanctions gradually come to an end? What if the Donald is elected President of the United States? In 2016, we have an election. Even if he is not elected, all Republican candidates have declared themselves against the recent accommodation with Iran. It remains to be seen what will happen. In the meantime, I think it is prudent to keep your eyes on that SDN list, whether you're fixing, and anticipate that nothing has changed thus far.